Hello everyone, we're back again.
Hey.
Rory's here again. And one of the things that we were talking about off camera was actually recruitment, because, and we thought we'd just press record again because it's quite an interesting topic, because we're trying to recruit at the minute, Rory.
We are, and it seems every time we try and recruit, it's more difficult than the previous time we tried to recruit, which was very difficult.
Yeah, okay. So, what is the perfect recruitment process for you? If you could do one now or name one, what is the perfect process?
I think for me, the old MD was never a fan of recruitment companies, for example. So he wasn't willing to pay £1 for any part of the recruitment process. So it was very much a kind of advertise it and they will come, build it and they will come type scenario.
Yeah.
And we were lucky with some hires and we were unlucky with others, and it was a roll of the dice. So I'm much more on the side of using recruitment companies. I don't believe we've yet had a hire from a recruitment company, and that's worked really well, and it's saved me a lot of effort and saved us a lot of time. But the problem increasingly just seems to be available candidates. So we're currently looking at a new engineer. So the engineering department is busier than ever. So we've got more designs than ever. So we've got people coming out of COVID desperate to innovate their way out of, a lack of profit, I suppose, for that period. We've got a component crisis where products that were long in production now have to go back to engineering to have components swapped out of them or redesigned to suit alternative components. We've got our new design health check service. So part of that is to help other companies with their component issues, but part of that is to solve reliability issues. We've got all these angles of why engineering are more busy. So naturally we want to expand engineering, but we can't seem to find any engineers. Really struggling at the moment.
I suppose.
Where are they, Tom? Where are they?
I don't know about engineers, but it's difficult what you said about recruitment companies, because you mentioned about the old MD, but other people would have this view of them. And in the past, they've contacted me when I've been in work. My CV's been out. We don't need a manager. Again, we're not talking about football at the moment because that will go on too long. And there's a negative perception of some of them, because you could say that a recruitment company, they are motivated by getting their fee. And what they want to do is fill a position to get their fee, and they would do that as much as possible. So is there a risk of them putting people forward, potentially filling roles for the wrong reasons, for their own personal gain?
Potentially. Certainly we've not seen that recently. We haven't had many candidates, so that's a little bit.
Not for this.
Yeah, I know what you mean.
This particular role is a specific.
Yeah. In general, you mean more?
Yeah, in general.
I know a lot of in fact, I think all recruitment companies now have this almost buyback guarantee, where if someone doesn't work out within a particular amount of time. But I think as well, most recruitment companies I speak to are not so short-sighted as to see it as a transactional kind of transaction on a single person. They want to have a long-term relationship. Which can be difficult for us because we don't hire that often. I think, I say again, of any company I've worked at one. But how often do we have people leave this company? Never. We hire when we expand. So we're one of those companies that people really want to work for, but we're expanding. And then, of course, given the huge gaps between our recruitment, the recruitment process is a bit rusty. The agencies sometimes change. We can't seem to find one agency to suit all of the roles as well. So we've got like an agency per department, I suppose, that we use. And the biggest issue for me is, I am guilty of leaving it too late to hire. I'm guilty of kicking the can down the road a little bit, and then my hand is forced, and at that point suddenly I feel this urgency. Urgency is the enemy of recruitment, absolutely. But it's very hard because you're desperately trying to. You've got an engineering department crying out for more resource. Can't get this engineer in tomorrow. If I get this engineer in tomorrow, it'll probably be the wrong hire. So on the one hand, I've got to take as long as possible to make sure I get the right guy. But on the other hand, I've got to take as little as possible, because the longer I leave it, the longer it is till I get any resource in there.
So like, the challenge for you at the moment, because there's been a lack of people out there, it seems, someone comes along, it's been a while, the challenge for you is to, I suppose, keep strict and disciplined with what the company actually needs, rather than going, look, we haven't had anyone, we need to get someone in.
Yeah, absolutely, because if you look at it that way would not actually be that different from before we used recruitment companies, where it was almost, I don't know, we'd advertise it locally, we'd have 3 applicants, and we'd be, okay, who is the worst of these 3? Right, okay, candidate A, and he'd come in and he'd be a roll of the dice. And that's exactly the same as if you rush a recruitment company process, but you also have to pay the recruitment company.
Yeah, but
if you're going to rush it, you might as well not bother using a recruitment company. You might as well just grab some people from the street, and they may or may not work out.
Save some money on that. But that is going to be the challenge, because what you'll find in situations where you come up with what you want for this role, which we have for this particular engineering role, and what you don't want to do is get distracted away from what you originally, yes, I tap the table then. What you don't want to do is get distracted away from what you originally wanted, which I think can happen. You kind of settle almost.
Happy is.
Yeah, happy is, and then further down the line, it's,
and the happy is can lead you in all kinds of directions. It can be something else this person can offer, which sounds really exciting, but when reality hits, it isn't actually that important. It can be just an assumption that because there's a line on a CV that this person is then competent in, I don't know, whatever it is, programming of X, Y, Z. But if you don't test that, you don't know. The concept I really like, I think, come from Sandler, is always be recruiting. Now, this is a great idea to me in principle. The idea of, well, actually, let's not wait till we need another engineer. Let's just always have an ad. We'll just get people trickling through, and we'll meet people, and we'll interview people, and now we do want to move forward. What about him? Or because we're not even thinking now we're going to recruit, but this guy comes along and he's so good, we go, well, actually, we'll have it.
Can't let him go.
Sorry to go back to football, but we're a football team. I don't necessarily need a striker, but so and so is available. All right, fine. Does that work in a smaller company though? Is the problem really, when you haven't got the time or resource or necessarily the budget to just have this continual expense of recruitment going on? Do you need to go, actually, we are only going to recruit when we can?
The smaller the company, the more cost inefficient it is.
So, for example, if we were interviewing 2 people a week when we didn't even have a role, that sounds well and good from a preparation perspective, but I think
you've got to think of also from the candidate's point of view. Would they even want to come? They see this job advertised, for example, and then you come in and you go, oh, actually, we haven't got anything. Just like your CV, and they're like, oh. So you run the risk of maybe
alienating people that you might have actually interviewed properly later.
So I like the idea of that, but I suppose the skill is in the implementation.
And it's a people problem as well. I mean, if we were talking about companies here, I don't know if you had an IT company call you and you go, okay, we're really happy with our IT company, but send us your details. And perhaps you've got 3 other IT companies like this. And then something happens with your IT company. You go, I need a new IT company. You're right. Okay, who have I spoke to? Here's 4 IT companies. You can't do that with people. Like, I just don't. It doesn't feel right to do that with people. For me, they'll have people on tenterhooks just lingering in the background.
The only way that could work is if maybe you meet them, have a chat, and they're in your mind.
Maybe. I mean, this is like
less formal. With
our production manager.
Where it's always there in the back of the mind. You know someone, and
it's almost thinking
if something comes up, it's worth giving them. It's worth giving them a call.
Because I mean, that scenario for our listeners was where we had someone we knew was very good, almost we wish you worked for us type scenario, but there wasn't an alignment, and then suddenly we realised we needed someone at the same kind of time that he realised that he needed a new job. A little discussion, and suddenly that works perfectly, but he was never at any point waiting for us one day to maybe react. There was never any of that kind of.
But I think when you said always recruiting, the imagery you get is collecting CVs. Whereas actually, it could be a mental thing, remembering the people you speak to. I mean, everyone goes on about networking and the term and everything, but maybe it's having that thought. And as an example, when we needed, say, things designed, graphic designed, I knew someone.
Yeah.
Isn't
there an argument there? I mean, to talk about almost people you've past interviewed, isn't there an argument to say, look, if you interviewed them at that point and they were that good, then you've taken them on then? It feels a little bit like, I don't know, forgive this awful analogy, but you've split up with your missus and then you're like, right, okay, who have I ever been out on a date for because I need a new missus? It just doesn't feel, it feels like going backwards, and if they were the right person, then you'd have been with them from then. You wouldn't be sitting there waiting in the wings.
Here's a scenario for you.
Okay.
Say you're doing, I don't think that was quite what I was referring to, but we'll roll with it anyway. A scenario is you're recruiting for an engineering, you have your number one pick, you want them, you've interviewed a couple of people, like, they're number one. You offer it to them, they say, nah, sorry, I'm emigrating. Okay, fair enough. Thanks for wasting my time. Could have told me that. But then you go to number two, the second one.
Yeah.
Should you then go to number two because number two is not what you want?
Oh, I think so. But to me, that's all in the same cycle. I thought what you were referring to is people from years gone past.
No. What I'm saying in this, so this is again a thing which you've got what you want from a candidate. It's everything that you want. Okay. They're the best one. For whatever reason, they can't take it, and then the one in the same cycle is not as good, which is why he or she didn't get picked.
Yeah.
Is it easy then just to offer it to the one who was second, where ultimately they're not the candidate you actually wanted?
Well, I think it's all about where the line of competency is for me. So, I mean, I'm assuming both people tick all the boxes of culture and personality and all that stuff. Are we okay to run with that?
Let me think about this. I would say
Are they both above the bar? Are they both above the bar? And the question is really, if the number one person didn't exist, would we have hired the number two person?
I suppose that is the question.
Because if that is the case, then absolutely. If it isn't the case and number two person is below the bar, no, we don't just suddenly hire them because number one person is no longer available. We would go search for more people.
But you still are lowering the bar.
But it's life.
That is life.
Well, we don't drive Ferraris. We drive the best cars we can afford to drive. We live in the best houses we can afford to live in. That doesn't mean we just give up on life.
But I know instances where fair. But I know instances where this has happened and it's gone wrong. And I'm not going to name any names or where they're coming from. Yeah. But I know that that's happened. So is that a danger? Because we talked to anyone about.
Because I suppose the danger is that if you set all your hopes on this number one person, they skittle away, and it's the urgency. It's the urgency.
It's the urgency. It's the shock. We need to react.
Yeah, it's the urgency that's the issue, I think, above everything else, and that's what could cloud how good candidate number two actually is.
Yeah.
Because you've suddenly got this urgency that you didn't have before.
It's an interesting one.
Yeah. I mean, for me, I get despondency when I say I don't have any candidates. Because it reminds me of those days gone past where it was almost like, well, we've got a handful of candidates, or we've got to pick one. And it just goes the wrong way for me. And it always seems you look in other industries and they've got 100 applicants and then they whittle it down to 5 and then they interview them and they do these video interviews and then they whittle it down to 3 and then they have these particular, it just seems this huge kind of like whittling down process, whereas it feels like we start right at the end of it with the quality of candidates that everyone else seems to have 100 of at the beginning and can whittle it down. We don't seem to be able to whittle down.
So,
and is that because we're such a niche business? I mean, embedded computing is not as well known as, I don't know, a fashion designer or something. People perhaps don't tend to grow up wanting to design PCBs as much as they want to fly fighter jets and go to the moon.
If you're in a position, you had one candidate who was super qualified, but they were a bit of a donut.
Okay.
And you had the other one who was a great guy, not as qualified.
Yep.
Guy or girl. What would you do in that situation? I know what I would do.
So to me, there's got to be a third angle, which is an ability to learn. So if the guy who has a great personality but doesn't have the competency yet has the ability to learn, then that's very different from the guy who's always not competency. So I think I'd need to understand more on that first. I would never sanction hiring arses because I think they can ruin your culture overnight.
In that situation, I wouldn't hire either of them.
Okay.
Because that's not what you want.
It's a trick question then, because you specifically said it was between one or the other.
Yeah, I think I said, if we roll back the footy, I said, what would you do? I didn't specify which one would you go for. I could be wrong. If I did that, I apologise. But, again, that's what you've kind of done there, is then you've almost...
I've kind of proven the mindset that I'm in, that it always seems to be choosing between particular people rather than stepping back. I mean, I remember a guy I really respect, he's a managing director of one of our customers, actually. I was talking to him about this, and he's one of these guys that had these 100 and respect, and got it down to 3. So he'd gone from 100 to 3, spent hours on this process, absolutely hours, and he got it down to 3, and he interviewed the 3 of them, and he said, don't like any of them. Went back to the beginning. I've just got a lot of respect for that, I think, to have spent all that time and not just be tempted to go, you know what, just we're willing for one of them.
But that to me sounds like the thing where he's got what he wants. He's been through a process. At the end of it, he still hasn't found what he wants. So he said, well, actually, the reality is...
Yeah, but you've got to be a strong character to do that.
You've got to be a strong character, but I can understand him doing that. Because I think it's very easy to... If you're wanting to get someone in, it's very easy to kind of forget about the potential flaws. And the example I gave where you did one or the other, and you said, well, I'd see their willingness to learn. But ultimately, you want someone, you think if someone's got a willingness to learn, who's going to teach them? That takes away from someone else.
The question back to this is, so obviously theirs is a bigger company than ours. Is it easier in a bigger company? Because the problem with a small company where there's 14 people, and like the idea of this engineer, I mean, if I spend 6 months, if I had 100 applicants and I spend 6 months getting them down to 3 applicants, and then I decide not to hire any of them, and I'm effectively back to square one, I a little bit expect to walk into engineering and they're like, well, what the hell? We need support here. Where's our support? And we go, oh, I didn't think they were quite right. And they're like, what, out of 100 people? I can almost imagine that conversation. And like, is it easier, like I say, when you're in a bigger company, because you think the bigger company you are, one person is less a percentage of that company. Because one person here is what? 7% of the company.
But also, like you said, when you've got a smaller company, these people will have an impact on everybody.
Oh, yeah.
In a bigger company, if you've got a massive department, God knows how many people, 50 people on the department, you've got maybe two or three people doing the recruiting, and then they don't really care that much. They'll go, oh, yeah, you fit into our culture, but it's not going to show up because it'll be masked.
Yeah.
But with a smaller company, you do need to make sure everything is right, because the example I gave, you say you're going back to that person and the willingness to learn. They're a nice guy, willingness to learn, but then what you're doing is you're taking away someone from their, in a busy workplace. You're taking someone away from their core role.
And this is the resource dip we always talk about.
And then actually,
you're trying to improve.
Gone anywhere.
Yeah, you're trying to improve resource. What you've actually done is reduced resource.
You've reduced resource.
Like training over there.
So I think for me, the key is you have to try to stick. It's not with anything. How long are you willing to wait for the right whatever it is? And most people would be, I would say, willing to wait for.
We should be. I mean, given we know that people tend, well, not necessarily for life, but I mean, people tend to stay here forever. We don't tend to have people kind of. This isn't like a stepping stone company. People come here, they like it, they want to grow with the company, and here they stay. So it's a lot more important to get the right person than it is if we think people are only going to be here for a couple of years anyway. That's
what I mean. If you are a company with like high churn anyway, and it's a big company, and you're always going to have people applying because maybe the name of the company anyway. You're not maybe as concerned about the growth, the immediate growth of everything.
And that's about having the right kind of people. I mean, the reason I don't like the idea of like headhunting people from other companies is I don't want the idea of someone walking through this door because of the salary they're being offered, or because of the car they're being offered, or because of the benefits package they're being offered, and that's the top of their priority list. I really hate that idea,
Yeah.
Everyone in this company wants the company to grow because they want to grow with the company and they want to succeed. And I feel the energy of that from everyone in this company. And I just think, again, one person that comes in for the money derails all of that.
Yeah, because their focus is slightly different, and because their focus is slightly different, they may be acting a certain way, which is not.
There's nothing wrong necessarily with being driven by money. I mean, that's salespeople generally are driven by money. I came up through sales, and certainly, like when Derek, our old MD, introduced the first bonus scheme, there was a marked step up in my motivation. I'm not going to pretend there wasn't, but it's not my top priority in life.
Yeah.
And I think that's where it can be different. And like I said, people, if you're trying to pry someone out of a job they already love, your only angle is because you're going to get more money, you're going to get more benefits, and then that's the sole proposition. And I'm just not so comfortable with that.
Yeah, which is ironic considering you support Chelsea, but we'll move on. But with the recruitment, one question I had: should a recruitment process involve a task? Do you think?
Yes. I mean, in an ideal scenario, I know you've got 10 bullet points of what competencies you need on that job description, and a task or multiple tasks should be able to determine every one of them, and that is what we're going to be trying really hard to do for future hires. But it's very difficult, especially when they're big tasks. I mean, for example, engineering, what you really want to prove is can they design a PCB?
Can they design something?
Now, that's not a 5-minute job. So how do you manage that? So that's something we certainly need to think about for this next person.
Yeah.
The other issues are things a little bit, like accounting. So let's say when we had to recruit for our accounts manager is the only person in the business that really understands accounts. So that becomes a bit more tricky. I couldn't, from my position, set an accounts manager a task to prove they're competent at accounts because I'm not competent at accounts and no one else is.
No.
So in that scenario, we've had to rely on our accountants and recruitment companies to almost devise a kind of set of competency tests such that it's proven already before it gets to us. Well, a candidate's proven already before they get to us what their competency is.
But also with the accountant, the account manager, whatever, they need to be able to form a relationship with, the MD, the managers. And I believe that was one of the deciding factors.
Yeah, that was, I positioned I positioned that. I mean, that actually worked perfectly, that process. We had a lot of applicants. Maybe it's because it was it's a general thing though,
common position. Qualified accountant.
Yeah. It's quite obvious to identify who would take that role, isn't it? Yeah. So yeah, we had a lot of candidates in. The accountants whittled them down to 5. They then gave them a rating out of 10, I think, for their competency.
Yeah.
I then had 3 here, and it was down to culture. Then it was about look, who can I trust? Who would fit the culture best?
Yeah.
And that's why we chose Susie for that.
Yeah.
So that's the perfect scenario, but it all falls apart where you don't have any candidates at the beginning. Where you don't have many candidates at the beginning.
Well, who knows if anyone's listening here?
Yeah.
Do you want to talk about what the role is?
Yeah, we're looking for an electronics design engineer, so we're looking for someone experienced in PCB design, ideally as well firmware and software development. But that's one of those things that most engineers tend to be hardware or software, and I think most engineers that have come here have been hardware, and then they've kind of picked up the software side and are now very good at it. But you don't tend to get de facto hybrid kind of hardware and software engineers.
Yeah.
So that's what we're looking for, Tom.
Okay. Well, maybe we can put a job description under this video or something.
Yeah.
Put it on
idea at all.
LI LinkedIn.
Excellent.
All right then. See you later.
Okay.
Bye.
Thanks. Bye.